What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel, back from vacation, feeling pretty good, maybe a little sleepy like the Boston Bruins might have been here on Tuesday evening. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Shams Benamor. Shams, how are we doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Just getting back into the thick of it. The NHL is... They may have taken a break, but they'll never change. Decide to put like 17 games at the exact same time. So just looking at all these goal alerts and trying to wonder which game is impacting my league.
Yeah, absolutely. I had kind of a schedule loss the week before the All-Star break, so I haven't been, it's been kind of a while before I've been hanging on every shot, every goal. It's nice to get back into the swing of things. I had a deep thought while I was on my way back from volleyball tonight, thinking about getting ready for the show. In what way are you and I like Colorado's goalie on Tuesday night? And the answer is not that neither of us can stop the New Jersey Devils from scoring, although that is true.
Okay, that was going to be my answer, so I'm interested in what you're going to say.
All right, well, so on the pod tonight, it is only me, and it is only you, so it is just us. Let's get into the show here. All right, so we got to start with a little bit of, news on the sad side. We've got Evgeny Kuznetsov entering the player assistance program. Obviously, we just got that news today. We don't have a ton of details, but that'll be something, obviously, to keep an eye on. We talked about this before. It can be difficult to sort of judge when these things will wrap up. Would you feel safe potentially letting Kuznetsov go? Obviously, I think we want to make a decision with as much information as we can, so I'm not recommending that anybody run out and make a quick change right now, but how would you maybe handle this moving forward?
Well, I'm with you on the whole personal situation of this, but on a fantasy side, I'm a little bit more cutthroat, and it was not like Kuznetsov was really much of a fantasy top line guy for you. So if you need to drop him, which is probably going to be a situation where a lot of stacked lineups happening this week where you don't have a lot of free movement, that if you need to drop him, I would be fine dropping him in basically any league, unless you're the deepest of deepest, but no situations you're probably scrapping for any player you want to have someone to pick up. So sadly, I hope the best, but he's an easy drop in my opinion.
Yeah, we're not doing a permission to drop episode, obviously, but I think that's probably the way to go, especially because he's not kind of been the fantasy asset that he has been in years past. That also does mean we have some interesting line to look at in Washington. We'll circle back to that in the back half of the show, since we don't have hot streaks and cold streaks so much since we were on the All-Star break. We're going to look at some interesting lines coming out of the break, so stay tuned for that. We'll put a pin in it for now. Another interesting development, we don't know for sure, but we think we might see Jonathan Quick getting a second game in a row. Now, we're not 100% sure about this, but we have some clues here. Tell us about what's going on in the Big Apple.
So, while we would wish that teams would just let us know who's going to start when, we know that that's never going to happen because people are getting surgeries on upper body out for the season. So what we need to do is we need to find any information that we can get to guess what's happening. So one of the things that we do to try to tell who's going to start from a goalie perspective is whoever's off the ice first at a practice is usually the one that is the starter. And that's what's happening in practice today. Is Quick was the first off the ice, and Shesterkin stayed for more practice. So that is a hint towards him starting tomorrow. However, since it's not game day, it's not as good as a guess, but really that's kind of where we're kind of using the crystal ball to guess who's starting.
So obviously this is of interest to us here because we have seen Igor Shesterkin struggle some this season. It hasn't been, as stellar of a performance as we've seen from him previously. And obviously Jonathan Quick is a proven commodity. He's in the tail end of his career, obviously. But he is a guy who, he's got Stanley Cup rings. He has, played, incredibly high level during his career. So it's not to say that he's necessarily jumping right back into that, but it is kind of interesting to see some real pressure on Shesterkin, a guy that I think coming into the season, really thought that it was going to be clear that he would be getting, the majority of the starts and probably a hefty majority of those starts. So just another thing to kind of keep an eye on. Would be interesting to see if he can continue some stellar play. I think he could maybe turn it into a 50-50 situation, and somebody who maybe streamed in quick for Monday might be rewarded with some extra games moving forward potentially.
Yeah, one way I would look at this is kind of how the Pittsburgh situation is that we were talking at a lot in, prior months about, is Jari going to start? Is Aleksandrovich going to start? But the way I see it is that while Quick is getting the play right now, I feel like, especially for him, he's on the older end. He could have streakies, but he could just have, say, a horrendous game against Tampa Bay, which is his next opponent, which is no slouch, and this could easily switch back. So this is going to be one of those situations where, as a Jari manager, I was kind of annoyed, but I wasn't trying to look to ship him off to try to find something. And that's just kind of how I would approach it here, is that Shesterkin, yes, it's bad for you looking for starts, but honestly, if there's one or two bad starts for Quick, I feel like it's just going to go back to putting Shesterkin in, because I don't think they really have the ability to kind of let Quick find his footing for a long time.
Oh, yeah. By no means would I recommend, letting Shesterkin, fall down, the lineup or I wouldn't consider trading him or anything else. I would look at it as kind of an annoyance for the time being, and you kind of wait for it to pass. Just weather the storm here, I think. Because he's shown us too that obviously he is supremely talented. Let's get into some injuries and outjuries here, Shams. We'll start out with Owen Tippett making his return to Philadelphia. Pretty much just looks like the same old lines that we hope to see. One thing maybe noticeable is we have Igor Zemula, who was the 7th defenseman. Obviously not an ideal situation for him. Not a ton of scoring from the Flyers here on Tuesday anyhow, so maybe not a ton to talk about, but obviously that Tippett, Couturier, Atkinson line has been finding some success, and Tippett's been a fun player to watch this season for sure. Obviously, he had one of the goals of the year before we headed into the All-Star break. Just some really outstanding play. So I'm sure Philly is glad to have him back, and I think anybody watching a Flyers game will enjoy having him back as well. And we can also head over to Carolina, give us the update on what's going on with Svechnikov. This is one that's, the information is not exactly flowing on what his situation is. But tell us what we do know.
Well, sadly, as you kind of hinted towards, we don't know much. It's basically, for what we've seen, this is about 2 days ago, is that, basically still not there, taking it day by day. And we'll see if he's ready to go for next game. That was prior to today, so obviously he was not ready for today. Still skating in a non-contact jersey, so he's not even taking contact. So this is kind of that situation where, sadly, it's going to be a wait and see. And I think really what the point is that this is one of those situations where it just kind of hurts everyone on the team, is that we saw for that long streak of just where Aho was going off, and just it felt like every Cade was having a great couple of weeks. And then I feel like what happens is that when Svechnikov and Aho can play together and that's a line, it just kind of brings every other line up because a player could go down. But now with this situation, it just kind of feels like it's kind of a muddied water. I forget the exact score, but they lost today to the Canucks. So just kind of hope, kind of stay strong. Hopefully Svechnikov comes back, and then all the Carolina players can get a boost.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been so fire. He's been boosting everybody out there on the ice with him. So It'll be great when they get him back. If he wants to take his time, I am up against the Svechnikov manager, so I won't be too upset if he takes another game off. But the game is more fun to watch when he is out there on the ice. We also have Sergachev, who is close to returning. Eric Erlinson was reporting that Sergachev was working with the second power play unit, which means we may be ready to see him on Wednesday versus the Rangers. So keep your eye on game day tweets. Svechnikov and Sergachev, both guys who could make a return in the near future, both guys that you're going to want to have on your lineup, if they are available. We also got some clarity on the Jack Hughes situation. These are all kind of interesting because they're just close to. So maybe on Thursday we'll be able to give some good news about some of these. But really the takeaway here is watch out for game day lines. That's going to be giving you that current, most up-to-date information. Coach Lindy Ruff said we'll see for the Calgary game. So that would be Thursday. And obviously another, just like Svechnikov, a huge boost that would be for the Devils to get Jack Hughes back in the lineup. So the Devils on Tuesday had a top power play of Andrei Palat, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Dawson Mercer, and Luke Hughes. Tyler Toffoli was out with illness, and those have been just a 1 or 2 game for the most part. So some increased relevance for Palat and Mercer. Mercer scored. I believe Palat had an assist this evening. So that's a good opportunity for them while it lasts. But if you have those guys in your lineup, you might have to think about cycling them out, just because if we see Hughes and Toffoli return, those 2 guys are likely being pushed off of that top power play and down the lineup. So that's a likely outcome there with those potential returns. How about some news out of the Blue Paint in Toronto?
So we're getting some interesting updates, or actually a little bit more concrete. We've been talking a little bit more of the subjective for the previous injuries, but it looks like Woll's latest update from the coach is that he's on track for the middle of February. And then he just now is just kind of going through the practices or just trying to get back on the ice. But that is now kind of the marker. And this is big because we're just been kind of hinting towards is that the team kind of likes having more of a platoon approach to goalies. So right now, Samsonov is getting all of the play. And while that's great, just kind of look, behind your shoulder to see with, the middle of February, which is only like a week or so away, that we could start seeing Woll coming back. And that might be coming more into a split versus one goalie getting all the games.
Yeah, quite the collapse for Martin Jones. Credit to Derek, who has been in the Short Shifts chat talking about how Jones stinks, and this is just a flash in the pan. It was nice while it lasted, but after that big loss that he had, I was ready to drop right away, and hopefully anybody listening has done so as well. It's been all Samsonov lately, and just maybe a week or so away from seeing Woll make his return. I think he is more likely to challenge Samsonov for starts than Jones is, unless he gets on. It would take another one of those kind of disastrous few weeks for Samsonov, plus Woll being bad or injured, plus Jones playing really well. I think the likelihood of all 3 of those things happening more or less simultaneously pretty low. So I think it's going to be Samsonov or Woll for the most part moving forward. It will be interesting to see how that all plays out. Last item we have on our outros, and this is going to kind of help us bridge across the ad break. Mark Scheifele made his return for Winnipeg. They were shut out by the Penguins. This was one of those good Jarry nights. We've been talking about how again, this is all vibes-based statistics, but feels like Jarry's outings have mostly been kind of crappy, or, he might have the highest number of really bad starts and quality starts. Nothing really in between from him. So another of his good nights here. I'm sure they're kind of getting used to things with their new lineup, and we will talk about them a little bit on the other side. For what it's worth, Scheifele scored, but it was waved off. So he could have potentially broken Jarry's shutout bid. And obviously, he's right back in the middle of that first line doing what he does. So I would imagine that, soon we'll be right back to what we're used to from Scheifele. We're going to head into a quick break here. On the other side, some interesting new lines to watch coming out of the All-Star break. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. All right, so Shams, we don't have the hot and cold streaks because everybody kind of got interrupted. It's time to start some new streaks in a world where Jonathan Huberdeau is among the hottest players in the NHL. So we thought we might look at a few of the interesting lines to watch coming out of the All-Star weekend and see what kind of changes we might expect going forward and if there's anything actionable and useful for us. So let's go ahead and start with the Jets that we mentioned before the ad break. We're going to be looking at a new Jets second line. The Jets looking a little more solid up the middle. What do you think we can expect moving forward from this new combo that we're going to see? Or that actually we did see here on Tuesday night?
So I think this is just kind of be the life of anyone that has Ehlers in their fantasy league, is that while it was nice to see him on the top line, it's back to the second, but now he has Perfetti, and depending on how you feel about Monahan, he might not have any of defensive ability, but it looks like his offense is back on track. Is that basically it's now those three together on the second line, and it just kind of sees is that while they didn't have any goals this game, as you mentioned before, with Jari showing well, is that they did seem kind of fine from a Corsi perspective, at least for most of the game. So they kind of showed a little bit of light, and then I feel like at this point, there's not really much to change unless they want to switch Perfetti around for like a Nino Niederreiter, that this is probably going to be a line that they're going to stick for a bit to give some time to see how it works out.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thinking about players getting traded, this is one where it seems very clear exactly where he's going to fit. Andrei Kuzmenko, who we'll mention in a bit, could move up and down the lineup, could move around. The way the Jets are designed right now, I think we're going to be very likely to see that second line, or at least the Ehlers-Monahan pairing stick together. I'm almost kind of annoyed that Monahan got traded just because he was on such a roll, and I think there is going to be some natural kind of opportunity cost to being traded to a new team where you might not be able to have that comfort level to be producing kind of the way that you were. So I think it would be hard to sort of continue that hot streak, not only because of the All-Star break, but then obviously compounding it by adjusting to a new team. Cool that he was able to get in the lineup right away, and definitely looking forward to seeing how that second line performs moving forward. The Jets obviously quite a turnaround to be contenders here, even though we've seen their goalies start to give up a few more goals than they have. That big stat for the season was how they so rarely had been allowing more than 2 goals, and now they've allowed 3 in a couple games, a few games here. Obviously was inevitable, but I think that second line is solid, if not spectacularly exciting, and I'm interested to see what they're going to be able to do together once they have some chemistry. I did mention a new update from the Flames, so let's head over to Calgary, and Shams, you take the lead here. The one half of the Kuzmenko-Lindholm swap.
So Kuzmenko does what Kuzmenko does, is that he got a power play goal, so far he's right now in the good graces. We'll see how long that lasts, but right now he is on, I guess, what you would call the top line of basically Sharangovich, Huberdeau, and him. And the other line maybe you might want to consider is that like the Colbin, Mangiapane, Backlund line that's just been kind of living there, always doing well. Both of those lines did really well on the even strength. And then the big thing is that, as I mentioned before, the power play is Kadri, Huberdeau, Sharangovich, Kuzmenko, and Noah Hanifin is the one that's actually being the defenseman there. And he got a goal alongside with Kuzmenko. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep in mind to see if that continues. And then for me is that as long as hopefully he doesn't end up in the doghouse talking about Kuzmenko, having Sharangovich, which surprisingly seems to be a gem for the team, could be something. And if Huberdeau could keep up his, at least some regression back to the mean, that could be an interesting line to be on.
Yeah, you have to imagine with 2 power play goals and a 4-1 victory over a team like Boston, you'd imagine that that going to keep that power play together at least for a while. So yeah, good on them. Way to come out and make some things happen. I think that's exciting for them. Obviously, Vancouver feeling very good about themselves as well. No actionable information here, but Elias Lindholm did tip home 2 goals on the power play for Vancouver in their 3-2 victory over Carolina. So, both players fitting in right away on the power plays for their respective teams. We'll see how that even strength stuff goes moving forward. But obviously, that's great for the teams involved. They're feeling good about themselves and the moves that they made. Looking forward to the future. I did say we would stick a little pin in the Washington situation. So, just quickly here, Washington has not been producing a ton of offense. We did see Connor McMichael move up between Oshie and Pacioretty. I'm falling right back into my Michigan fandom nicknames here. They didn't produce a ton here, but that is kind of an interesting spot for McMichael, who has, performed from lower in the lineup at different times throughout the year. Just maybe something. He's a Sunday player, so could be something there for you if you're looking for a stream this weekend. And then we have an interesting one for the Minnesota Wild. We had been seeing Marco Rossi centering Kaprizov and Zuccarello, but we've got a new face in there. What's the latest out of Minnesota?
We say a new face, but it's an old face that kind of keeps on always coming back, no matter how many times they want to try someone else to center Zuccarello and Kaprizov. Hartman is back up there, so we'll see how that goes, but obviously the chance to play with Kaprizov and Zuccarello's no slouch is that I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't think they have the greatest lineup this week, but maybe if you have a free move or you're doing really well or really poorly in the week and not really interested in this time, it might be a chance to see if you could sneak Hartman back in there and hopefully rekindle the magic of last year.
Yeah, Hartman, since he returned from 2 games with injury, he had kind of a warm streak, 7 points in 9 games. He only has 2 goals and 1 assist in the last 8 games, but he has been shooting pretty consistently, 3+ shots in 5 of those games. I kind of like him if he has that exposure to Zuccarello and Kaprizov. We do see the Wild play Wednesday, Friday this week, Monday, Wednesday next week. And over the next 3 weeks, they have 6 total off-night games. So, in terms of your lineup construction, he could be a pretty efficient add if he holds on to that line 1 deployment. Now, it could all go into a blender, 5 minutes into the next game, potentially, and we could see Rossi, right back in his spot instead of demoted down to line 3. But if he is able to show some consistency, if they're able to score, and if he can hold on to that spot, just the way the Wild schedule is playing out over the next little while here, he could be a sneaky good add if he's lying around there. And of course, having an audition against the Chicago Blackhawks, who, the roster is not so hot. I think that could be a good way to sort of jumpstart his efforts. And if, I think that's as good an opportunity as you're going to get to kind of seize a nice deployment and get some quality exposure over the next little while. So that's something that I would keep an eye on. I think he could be a very interesting add if he is available in your league. He's picked up in my division, sadly, but, I hope that some other people are able to grab him and make some hay during this little segment where the Wild have that advantageous schedule. Shams, we have hit the end of the road here for us today. I want to thank you so much for joining me Always fun to get back into the swing of things and get to talk some hockey. Pretty sizable amount of content from the Short Shifts crew lately. We had Jeremy stepping in for some action. It's just been a pretty solid all-star weekend. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves, either, not having the stress of following every score, but also, missing out on some of the gambler's rush as well. So glad to be back in the thick of things with you here. I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
All right, it's always great to be back with these shows. We had a couple of days off here and there for the holidays and the streaks, but now back into the thick of things and having a good time.
All right, well, best of luck to everybody. I hope your fantasy week, or possibly, part 2 of your 2-week match is off to a great start. Hopefully some of what we provided for you will be helpful for you moving forward. And please give us a follow at Short Shifts KK. Brian and Elon, of course, can be found at Keeping Carlson. GameDayTweets.com is going to have all the best and latest information from hockey Twitter at your fingertips. Visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.